Okay, we're back. We all make mistakes in life. Most of mine involve 4 wheels and an engine, sometimes 2 wheels and an engine. Maybe one of them is filming here outside, but I think this place is going to be quiet enough that I can film outside and it still sounds good to you guys. Now, where is this place? Well, that I cannot tell you just yet, but I will tell you in our next video. Today's video is about the new series we are going to start, and this is going to be kind of alongside our custom builds. This is how I'm going to make money so that we can keep producing content. This is it. This is called Derelectibles. And Derelectibles, we're going to be saving some old cars. Some of them deserve to be saved. Some of them don't deserve to be saved. The one today, well, we got a rough start. This car was brought to me by a man who I sort of know. He frequents my shop and has been trying to sell me stuff since I got in this new shop. This is a 1965 Mustang. Now, the 1965 Mustang is the first year of the Mustang. It's really valuable because of that. If you want an early Mustang, this is the time to get one. And the prices on them have been pretty high. This is a 6-cylinder car, but they've been going for like 15, 16 grand. I paid way too much for this car, which we'll talk about later on. That was probably my first mistake of many with this build. How are the noodles?
Good.
Good. Now, it's about here that I start questioning whether or not this was a good idea. I know I probably should have questioned it when I went to pick up the car, but this is it. Now, the guy told me that all of the parts were with this car, and all it needed was a paint job and to be assembled, and that it was a running and driving car. I started questioning that logic or that fact right around here. So unfortunately, it took me this long to figure out that I'd made a massive mistake and paid way too much money for this car. But the show must go on, so I started assessing. So because this whole goal is making money, I'm going to keep a track down here in the corner of the screen of how much money I'm spending on the car. I tracked every single dollar, from screws to parts to everything. I did not track my labor on this one. We'll start doing that later. But with this one, we just tracked every single thing. So the car I spent $3,200 on, and it was supposed to be a running driving car. Hey buddy, it was supposed to be a running driving car that just needed paint. You'll see. On to Act 2. Alright, so anytime you gotta start a car, you need fast fuel, air, spark, and timing, and so I just went through that with this car. We definitely had air. We have a carburetor that's allegedly works. We had spark, and I couldn't really check the timing without trying to start the car. When I started the car, no fuel. So pulled the tank out and dumped it out, and the fuel looked great. I strained it. There was some rust in the tank. The fuel was very old, obviously, so we got rid of all of that to put new fuel in along with some Techron. I think nastier than what's in that gas tank.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So after a little bit of tinkering, we did get the engine to run. But does the car drive? There's a big jump from running to driving. And the answer is technically yes. our wheels and tires were flat. Luckily, we were given another set of wheels and tires that were supposed to be good, and so I threw those on. They were flat as well. So no test drive just yet. Now, again, I was told when I bought this car that all it needed was paint, and I made a huge mistake. You just don't, like, you shouldn't trust people that are trying to sell you something. Do your due diligence, do your homework. Huge lesson learned. I got into the interior and found roofing shingles. I thought it was carpet, it was roofing shingles, and when I pulled them back, you guessed it, rusted floors. Luckily, I had done this on the MG, had a little bit of practice with it. I'm still not great at it, but I can replace a floor pan. I ended up making these out of the bed sides of my Nissan Titan that I cut out forever ago. Just hammered in some indentions, put them in the floors, they fit pretty well, and welded them in, caught the car on fire, got the fire out of the car, and continued welding. This is a long process. It took me about 7 or 8 hours to do both, but they were sealed and they were done. I covered these with what's called a rusty metal primer. It's an oil-based primer from Rust-Oleum. The stuff is just solid. Like it's so strong. It's very easy to put on. You just brush it on. Like it says, you can brush it onto rusty metal, which is cool, and it'll prohibit the rust from spreading. Now, there wasn't any rust left on the floorboards. I grinded it all away, but just for safe keeping, for sound mind, just so I would know that the rust was taken care of, we used that primer on top of it, and I do feel really good about the repair. Now, next was stopping. The first time I drove this car, I drove it a foot or two, it almost ran into my 911. So the brakes just don't work. I didn't know why. So while we were at SEMA, I met a guy named Brick who works for Phoenix Systems. Now, Phoenix Systems has this patented brake bleeder that allows you to bleed your brakes by yourself, which is huge for me, because if you ever try to bleed brakes on your own, you know it's really difficult, and there's always going to be air in the system, and air in the system is bad. So we want to get all the air out of our brand new system that we just built, and Brick sent us this stuff via Phoenix Systems. This is one of their brake bleeders here. This is a vacuum and pressure pump, so it pulls vacuum here, pressure out there. We'll show you how it works in just a minute. Here's a good diagram. So here's another one, and basically you draw the fluid up from the canister through the brakes up into the master cylinder, and it pushes all of the air up to the top, which means you can have the perfect brake setup by yourself, which is really awesome without having someone in there pressing the brake and all that stuff. We're gonna put this stuff to the test right now, and I'm very excited because this car has actually never stopped for me. I almost ran into my Porsche the other day. All right, let's set it up, let's use it, see how it works. All right, so I didn't film me using the Phoenix Systems pump and bleeder because I needed some practice, and also this is not a great brake system to show you guys how it works. We will be doing it in a future video and showing you guys how it works. It's a really cool system, and it helped me diagnose some stuff with this brake system that I don't think I would have been able to figure out otherwise. That is, all of my soft lines were absolutely clogged all the way, and all of my hard lines had leaks. It was frustrating, but we did figure it out. Thanks to the Phoenix System bleeder, we were able to pinpoint where each problem was and address them as we went through the car. So made some hard lines. I've been doing a lot of practice with this recently because I've just needed them, and I've gotten pretty good at it. So I was able to just make these for like 30 or 40 bucks. I'll put the total down here, and they work great. The soft lines were also clogged, which I found out through using the Phoenix Systems bleeder, and so I replaced those as well, and that meant that we had a working brake system. We had to replace literally all of it, so it should work, but it does. All of the wheel cylinders and stuff worked like they were supposed to. This is a 4-wheel drum brake car with manual brakes, so it's a pretty simple system. Not the most effective at stopping, but it does stop eventually. So we had a working brake system, we had working fuel system because we replaced all that, we had a working carburetor because we replaced a bunch of stuff there, and we had working spark. So with all of those things, we could now attempt to drive this death trap. I mean, this car. We could drive this car. Stop. Ish. Oh, that's good, dude. here we go. So we're gonna drive this to my house, which is about a mile away. I've never driven without a windshield before. The car does work, the brakes do work, which is awesome. My running driving Mustang is now actually a running driving Mustang. I just had to replace the brakes, the fuel system. I had to fix the carburetor. We've still got to fix the alternator. And I had to get some tires replaced. And I think that's everything. But it does run and drive now. I'm pretty nervous, but let's take it for a ride. All right, are you ready?
Let's do it.
I'll hold this.
Okay.
We're off. We picked a pretty busy time to do this. All right, here we go. Maiden voyage. Transmission shifts, that's good. Right now. Brakes do work. They're not great, but they work. Getting a little bit of squealing up front. Pretty nervous about that. We're going anyway. Almost to the finish line. The car drives great. Oh man, this is nerve-wracking. Come on, baby. We're almost home. We're almost there. Just a little bit longer. 50 yards. Here, we made it. And off. Oh. She got a little hot. All right, adrenaline's going a little bit. We did overheat, but it's okay. We made it here. Drives great.
It seemed like it was going.
I mean, other than that, it drives great.
Where's it coming from?
I have no idea, dude. Surprise, my running driving Mustang needs a radiator. My eyes are like watering.
It's internal to the radiator.
Mythbuster said you can crack an egg in them. It'll seal it. Maybe we should test that on the channel. Maybe we will. Oh, thank goodness. She looks great. She looks great. So why drive the car anyway? Well, my paint booth was at my house, and I only had a very small window to paint this car, and so I needed to do it as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, the car was all busted apart, so I had to unload all the parts into the paint booth, paint them first, and then move the chassis in and paint it, and I'll show you guys this whole process. basically the way I do it now, this is a process that's been developed over the course of several years. I'd never painted a car before YouTube. Now we've painted several, and I've changed the process a little bit each time, and I think this one is my favorite. It resulted in the flattest car. It resulted in the best quality paint that I've ever seen, or I've ever produced out of that paint booth. And so I really like it. And here is the breakdown. Basically, I sanded everything down, got all of the surface rust off, and hit it with a rust prohibiting spray paint. So this is a paint that's it's actually made to be sprayed over rust. Anywhere I had rust on the car, I used this black spray paint, and it just makes sure that the rust is not gonna come back. It's gonna neutralize anything that might be there, something that maybe I can't see. It's just peace of mind more than anything. After that, I went over it with Slick Sand, which is an Evercoat product. I'm not, what? Okay, but I don't have any more words on there to read. Anyway, so I started with Slick Sand. That's the gray primer. It's just because I had it. It's pretty expensive, so I don't actually use Slick Sand anymore. What I've moved to is G2, but you'll see me use the Slick Sand and then spray a guide coat over that, sand the guide coat away, and then add G2, which is the black primer. So G2 is a polyester primer, which means it doesn't shrink back, and you can spray it on super thick. So I just laid this stuff on really, really thick and then blocked it down. Now, when you block G2, the cool thing is it's black, and it leaves orange peel, and so as you block, the orange peel starts to disappear, and when it's all gone, you know you have a flat panel and everything is smooth. After that, we hit it with some base coat. I just use PPG Shopline. It's like their cheap version of paint, and it works really well for what I do, especially in the environment I'm painting in. I just like it. After that, PPG Shopline Clear Coats, Universal Clear, and we were done. Now, the finish on this is actually really, really good. I've had some horrible finishes in the past, horrible paint jobs in the past. Like I said, I learned to paint on YouTube, and if you go back and look at some of the stuff I painted for the MR2, you'll see there was a lot of laughing happening in the comments for the mistakes that I made, but we've gotten a little bit better, and this paint job really does look smooth. It looks super, super, it's very reflective, and there's a lot of depth in it, which is a hard thing to achieve in white paint. Now, the color that we used is Wimbledon White. It's kind of an off-white color, and it's a very classic Mustang color. This is the color this car came from the factory, and so I'm just taking everything back to factory colors. It was a really cool spec from the factory, so that helps, but also it just helps with value. Come along now. Come on. Get. Come on. Keep walking. Come on.
This will be funny when you edit it. Sounds pretty awful for a running driving car.
What?
Sounds pretty awful for a running driving car.
Don't get me started. Sounds like it's backfired. I may be out of gas though. Cause I have some. Throw some gas in real quick. Yeah. I got a new carburetor for it that'll fix all that, hopefully. But it does sound awful for a running driving car. Doesn't look too bad though. It's okay. Couldn't tell in there if it's good or not. I got overspray everywhere, so that's cool.
Hold on.
Like I said, when I bought this car, everything came with it. So that all came in buckets. Now, right after I bought this car, maybe before I bought it, I'm not sure. Sometime in the recent history of Mighty Car Mods, they bought a Civic that was the same way, and surprise, surprise, it didn't have all the parts. Well, guess what? This one didn't either. So as I sorted through the parts, not really knowing what most of them were, it became pretty obvious that I was missing a lot of stuff. But I wouldn't know until I put it together. I'm not a 65 Mustang guy. I'm hardly a Mustang guy. My dad likes Mustangs, and so I didn't really know what I needed, so I couldn't tell what was missing. But let me tell you something. There was a lot missing, but I couldn't focus on that. I just had to take little projects as they came to me. So we put all of the parts in their piles and moved on. Now there were some new parts that came with the car, like the tail lights, bumpers, some of the trim pieces. So I went ahead and put all of that stuff on just to kind of give me a feeling like I was getting something done, even though there was such bigger problems to handle. It just kind of helped me feel like the car was moving in the right direction.
One of the what?
One of the curtain lines.
How? Who wants to tell the truth? 'Cause they don't just fall. So tell the truth. Don't get in trouble. Tell the truth. What happened?
I kept pulling the curtain lines up so we could see what Mommy was doing, and they fell.
And then after that, it was time to pull the entire interior out. I figured I was going this far, I might as well do a full interior, and to start getting everything out of the way and seeing what I have is, I think, the best method. So pulling all that out, I could kind of see where the condition of the floor, the condition of the doors, and everything else that was going on in there. The windows, we ended up having to replace some window parts. It was a lot. I painted the floor with black paint. Now this black paint is the Rust-Oleum oil base, just like the rusty metal primer I was talking about earlier. So the whole floor got treated with rusty metal primer, and then it got treated with this oil-based black paint. There's a boat behind me. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's there. We treated the whole thing, so it is very much sealed now from the elements. It's protected, which is awesome, and it looks good. After that was all painted, it was time to install the interior kit. I bought a full interior kit for this thing in medium metallic blue. It is a beautiful color for an interior, especially in a white car. Also, we had a kit. If you didn't see the last video, that's my new kit. I got another one now. There's 3, which does explain why it's been a little while since we posted a video. She's like almost 1, but speaking of kids. What?
I can come with kind of.
He's not going to hit you with that rock.
No, he can't have a rock.
Don't hit him with a rock either. We got 3 kids now. So that is the newest addition to our family, watching me sort through all of the new interior parts. It was a lot of parts, and it had almost everything I needed to put the interior in. So I just went from the bottom to the top, started working my way up. 1 second. Yes. Hey, y'all stop fighting, please. Starting with the carpet. Now it came with like a sound barrier layer and then blue carpet for the interior kit. It's a 2-piece carpet set, which is pretty cool. It makes it very easy to kind of get everything to fit in the right spots. I had to cut holes for the seat belts, but that's pretty much it. So we put the 2-piece carpet set in. It looked great. It was really easy to go in, and then it was just building on top of that. So next up, we put the shifter back in. I took it out to put the carpet in, and then put the dash pad on. Again, it's all very easy. It's all very cheap. These cars were made to be bought by young people, and I think they pretty much hit their market with this car when it came out. I think a lot of young people own these cars, including my dad when he was younger, and it worked. And part of that was keeping all the materials really cheap. So there's a lot of sheet metal screws in this car. There's a lot of rubber and metal and plastic. I guess there's really not that much plastic. A lot of rubber, a lot of vinyl, and a lot of metal. A lot of things that are kind of multi-purpose. So a lot of the interior is actually just pieces like the door itself. It's just painted the interior color. back panels are actually metal, and mine were pretty rusty. So I went ahead and sanded those things down and resprayed them. I got this color matched interior paint from Scott Drake, I think, and it is just perfect. I mean, spot on, matches the interior. It was the best purchase I made. If you're gonna do this, you need 2 cans. 2 cans is plenty enough to get the whole interior painted. It really does make a huge difference having fresh paint that is the exact same color as the interior. It looks beautiful. So we painted those panels, put those back in, and already the car's starting to feel a little bit more like a car, a little more hospitable to humans. Next was the seats. So pulled the seats out. I've recovered seats on the channel before. I think we've done 3 or 4 of them. And when you have seat covers that fit well, it's pretty easy. You just stretch this stuff over the seat. You use hog rings and hog ring pliers, which is like a staple, a manual staple basically. And you staple the material around the seat. This material is like a vinyl, it's very like 70s, 60s, 70s interior material. And very stretchy, very pliable. It was easy to get around the seats, and it really transformed these seats. I didn't change anything else. A lot of times they'll tell you that you should put new foam in, and probably we should have, or we could have, I guess, but the seats still look great. They feel great. They're comfortable to sit in, so I'm happy with the decision to just use what I had, because it wasn't that expensive, and they look awesome. Next up was the thing that I have been dreading since the beginning of this car, and that is the headliner. Now, headliners on old cars are awful. You can get a new style headliner for this car that goes up kind of in place like what you're used to if you've ever done a headliner. The old ones use bows of metal that are strung through basically a sheet of leather or pleather, and it's stretched lengthways and sideways across the roof. It looks awesome. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful look. It feels good. It looks good. But it is a nightmare to install. I did this install by myself. I didn't really film it because it was just very time consuming and mind consuming, but there is a video I'll link below from, I think, CJ Pony Parts, showing you how to do this. If you have to stretch a headliner, even if it's not for a Mustang, watch this video. It helped me so much. I actually stretched the whole headliner, held it in place with some windlace, and pulled it all down and did it again. And the second time, it just came out awesome. It really, really looks good. The reason it's such a pain is the windshield and rear window have to be out to install this headliner because it folds underneath those windows and then glues. Pretty terrible design if you ask me, but it does look right in the car, and it's what we needed to do. So I went ahead and did that. I'm happy with how it turned out. Even now, looking back, it looks great. So very, very excited about it. If you need any tips, the only tip I have is pull harder than you think you have to when it comes to getting it stretched right, and make sure the rods are centered, and you'll be good to go. They can't see that, bub. If you want them to see it, you need to go behind me and do it. All right, after that, somebody had cut out the stereo bezel to put in some sort of aftermarket stereo. I don't know. Don't hit me with that. What are you doing?
I just tried to tap.
Can I tap you?
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's part of the video.
So I got a repair panel for the stereo, and they're made to be welded in. I didn't realize this. The whole dash on this car is metal, in case you didn't know. And I was too late to weld it. I didn't want to cut apart and weld the dash after I've done all this work to make the interior new. So I basically just cut out the rough stuff and glued this in with the same adhesive I used for the headliner. I'll link that below as well. Basically anything I used in this build will be linked below and categorized so you guys can find it if you want to use any of the products I use. So I glued it in, and then I ended up using some screw and posts, which is an aluminum screw and a post. It looks like a rivet to hold the bottom in just to keep it secure so it wouldn't kind of pull off of the dash. With the new radio, we're gonna put in new speakers. So it's JBL in the back. The front is just a reproduction speaker from the factory style. It's not a great speaker, but it fits in the speaker slot up front by the windshield. So it's gonna work for this application. We're trying to make this thing look pretty original. And then the next job that I was dreading. So started with the headliner. The next job to dread after the headliner was the windshield and the rear window. I've never installed a windshield on my own. I've heard that installing old school windshields are nightmares, so much so that the people that I use to install all my windshields will not touch them. They won't touch a gasket windshield anymore. All they'll do is the urethane, the new style stuff that glues in. So it was up to us to do this windshield, and it was a little bit easier than I expected. Again, I followed a CJ Pony Parts video to do it. I'll link that below. Did the front and rear, had some leaking after they were done. So we went in with the 3M window sealer, I think it's called bedding compound, and just touched up the spots that were leaking, got them sealed. And that means that there's no water that's gonna get in when it rains, but it also means that as you're driving, you're not gonna get like whistling air through the windshield. So really good, I'm glad that's over. I will never do it again. I will find someone that can do it for me because it is a terrible experience. All right, and in the middle of all this, I'm trying to assemble the car, and the screws that or the threads that hold the door to the door hinge were busted, and you can't fix them. There's no really good fix. I tried using a bigger screw or a coarser thread. It didn't work. I ended up having to literally cut the panels off of the door and make new threaded plates and weld them back in, basically is what I did for this door. And it got it all back together, and that was great. I got it together, it worked, it took forever, but it was done, and I was finally able to put the door back on, which is great because it was the last piece of the puzzle. Now, in the middle of all this, I did try to save the hood I was given. It had already had some really shoddy bodywork done to it, and then I put my shoddy bodywork on top of that, and it just looked awful. So I bought a new hood from Scott Drake and put it on the car. It was great. It did have one blemish, but I fixed that. And it looked fine. So we put that on, put the rest of the car together so that I could roll it into the body shop, the paint shop, and paint the hood, and that'd be kind of the final piece of this process. And then this happened. As badly as I don't want to record this, I'm going to, because I've learned my lesson in the past. I've got the car ready to go back to the paint booth to finalize everything so I can put it all together and sell it. Selling my house in 2 days. And I needed to get the car into the paint booth today so I could tear the paint booth down because it's on somebody else's property, which is fine while we live here. We want it down. We don't. Anyway, I was not backing up. I was flustered. I got the car started and thought it was in neutral because I was pushing it around the other day, but evidently when I put the shifter back in, I had it in reverse. So I had the door open, just kind of trying to get it running, going back and forth under the hood, got it to run, and it went in reverse, and the door caught my carport, the very last leg of my carport. And if you can see, just put a massive kink in my door right there, so that door is KO'd. And I can't get the car moved right now. I'm really upset. I'm really upset. I'm out of time. This is the way it goes sometimes. I'll update you guys when I have a solution. All right, so there's a lot happening here in my mind. Basically, I folded this door in half, which means I have to buy a new door. New doors are like $460, so that just eats away at the budget even more. And also, we are moving. Like, as I'm filming this, we are moving. And so I had to tear the paint booth down because it wasn't technically on my land and it didn't technically follow any sort of codes, and so I needed to get rid of it before we sold the house. And the day I folded the door in half was the same day I needed to tear the paint booth down. So I was going to literally paint the Mustang, let it cure, roll it out, tear the paint booth down. So that was tough to deal with, and that's part of what flustered me so much, other than just the fact of having to redo work I'd already done, and I just spent 8 hours fixing that door, only to fold it in half. But again, the show must go on. I had to paint this car, and I really needed the booth to do this part because I wanted to blend the hood to make sure all the whites matched. I've had issues in the past, like with the Audi, where some of the whites didn't match when I got done because I painted stuff in different times and didn't do any blending. I didn't want that to happen again. So painted the hood and then blended it into the fenders and door just to make sure that the transition was good and that your eye won't pick up on any differences if there are differences. Paint came out great again, so really happy with that. You'll notice I swapped over to the purple Harbor Freight $15 gun. In the middle of this, I've been using a Warwick, which is like $180, and it's worked great for the past few years, but it's just tired. I don't know if they sell rebuild kits or not, but it's tired. I'm gonna move up to a higher end gun. So to get this job done, I just went back to Old Faithful $15 Harbor Freight gun. They're good for about one paint job, and they just don't clean out well, so I normally don't use them more than that. But with that, the paint was done, almost. Now I have a door. So the door came in shortly after getting the car painted, but we had already torn the paint booth down, so I took it to my shop and just painted it in the open air in the shop. It still came out pretty good. I got some runs that I wasn't stoked about, but those wet sanded out easy. Overall, very happy with it. The door fit great. The interior part of the door looks great. Like I said earlier, these doors are they're part of the interior, so there's no panel that covers up the whole door. There's only like a quarter panel kind of thing that sticks onto the door to make it look more like fabric. But the majority of a Mustang door is textured metal that's made to look like vinyl, but it's actually just painted metal. So it all looked really clean and good, and that was great for interior purposes. It makes my new interior look even better. Alright, so with that out of the way, it was time to finish the rest of everything. The taillights never worked when I bought this car, naturally, because why would they? And it was because of the wiring. The wiring was just all shot. It was very messy, and I felt like it was a good time for me to test out my new wiring tools and skills. I got a bunch of wiring stuff for the MG and for a few other cars that I needed to be able to rewire, and that included a label maker with heat shrink wrap so I could label each of my wires, which I did on this one. Some Deutsch connectors, which is like a modern day connector. They look very similar to, like, it may be the same as Audi connectors if you ever had an Audi. They look a lot like those. And some wire sheath and some heat shrink, things like that. Just higher end stuff, higher end wiring than I've ever used before, and it worked really well, and it produced a really nice looking harness. So I made this harness for the taillight system. Now normally this harness would run the length of the car up behind the gauges, and I tested those wires out and everything worked. So to make it a little bit easier on me, I just put the plug in the trunk and it plugs into my taillights. This fixed my blinkers, it fixed my taillights, it fixed my running lights, it fixed everything, which is really, really awesome, and it's much cleaner looking than the factory wires that were literally like a rat's nest in the back of the trunk. So we got that sorted and was back to the interior to finish up just a few things. The steering wheel was in okay shape. It was a little cracked, it's very old, but I felt like with some paint it would be fixed. So I went ahead and took it and painted it with Krylon Fusion paint, which is the paint I just use for pretty much everything because it bonds to almost all things except for like leather. It doesn't really like leather or like soft material. It kind of stays sticky, but other than that it works with pretty much everything. So hit that with some satin black and pulled the centerpiece off of the steering wheel and just gave it a wash in the sink with some soap and a toothbrush and got all the dirt off of it. It cleaned up pretty well. It's not perfect, but it fits kind of the era of the car, and I think it looks really nice in there with the car. Now after that we had to work on the gauges. The gauges were really, really ugly. They were dirty and old and messed up. Everything in this car again is very cheap. It was made cheap from the factory, and so a lot of it's just meant to be replaced or thrown out. And so the same goes with these gauges, and luckily places still offer parts, so you can get basically the whole front fascia, new plastic, new everything. You can get new gauges, but they're pretty expensive. My gauges tested okay, so I replaced the front fascia and plastic, and they looked basically brand new. So really excited about that. It only costs, I don't know, I'll put it in the corner, but I think it's $40 or $50, and that made the gauges look brand new, and it really kind of pulled everything together in the interior. So we installed those back in there and put the steering wheel back on, and now the interior really was starting to feel complete. It was starting to feel like a finished car, at least from the inside. But we still had one major problem, and that is that our running driving car does not run or drive anymore. The Autolite 1100 carb that was on there gave up on me, and I put this Weber on. It's a Weber 3236, a carburetor that I love because of how easy it is to tune like the idle and get it running really smoothly. I've never used it on a 6-cylinder, but I read on the internet it was possible, and if the internet says it, it must be true. So I put it on and immediately could not get the car running at all. Went through several attempts at starting and changing and starting over the course of probably 3 days. Could not get the car running. It was very, very frustrating. And I found out that it was jetted improperly. But I couldn't find the source, or couldn't find a source for what jets would work with a 3-liter 6-cylinder engine. This carb is made for 4 cylinders mostly. But I know a lot of Jeep guys put it on their 6 cylinders, so I felt like this would work. I did just decide to tune it like you would tune them back in the day. I got a bunch of idle jets and bumped them up until the car would run. Ended up with like a 75 on the idle jet over the original 50, and the car finally turned on and idled. I found a source online that gave me all of the sizes for jets for a Jeep, and they're a little bit bigger than the 6-cylinder from the Mustang, but I figured it was close enough to get us going, and it did. It did get the car running pretty well, so put those in. I'm going to make a video later for you guys that want to run a Weber on a 6-cylinder on kind of what you need to get it started, and then you can kind of fine-tune from there. Finally got the car running, and it was on to the next thing, which was the heater core. It leaked. I know. Surprise. But I had a coolant leak in the cabin. It was coming from the heater core. When I pulled it all apart, it was obvious that it had not been fixed, replaced, or serviced in about 50 years. The heater core was rusty. The box was falling apart. The ducts were disconnected and broken. It was never going to work as a heater again. And again, just like everything else with this car, because everything's so cheaply made, you're able to get replacements for basically everything. And so I got a full heater rebuild kit, replaced all of the seals that are foam, replaced all of those, replaced the heater core, replaced the distribution block that sends the air up into like your dash vents. It's all brand new, which is awesome. The blower already works, so I didn't have to replace that, but I did replace the wiring to it. And with that, we had a working heater and no more coolant leaks in the cabin. Now, something cool I didn't know about the 65 Mustang is the trunk was covered in like a plaid protective mat. I ordered one of these mats, and along with the spare tire cover and a lot of other things, I was going to set it up like factory, but a lot of that was unavailable when I ordered it. It was back ordered or whatever. So I did get the mat and a couple of covers and a couple of bags that all match, but I couldn't get the spare tire cover, which is a little bit of a bummer, but it still looks really nice in there. I sealed the whole trunk up with the same Rust-Oleum paint, so it's all black underneath and protected from rust, and then laid this cover in, and it really does finish out the trunk nicely. I think it looks great when you open the trunk and see the plaid in the back, and it's very durable. It's very like thick, kind of like a vinyl material, so should last a long time. And if not, they're really easy to replace. So finished that out. That really kind of finished out the trunk with the new harness and everything we built, and it looks awesome. Now, I was having trouble keeping the car running with this carburetor. I'd gotten it to run, but it wouldn't stay running, and it was acting like a vacuum leak. And if you listen on video, you can actually hear the vacuum leaking, and the problem is the adapter. So basically, all carb adapters are not exactly flat. They're cheap normally. Maybe the more expensive ones are flat, I don't know. But they're cheap normally, and you can get some air leaks. And if you get an air leak underneath the carb, it messes your entire fuel mixture up because you're getting unmetered air. It's just like having a leak after the mass airflow sensor. You're getting unmetered air into the engine, and the carb doesn't know. And so basically you just have the wrong fuel mixture, and the car won't run. What I did to fix this problem is I got some Permatex ultra tacky gasket dressing or something. I use Gasket Cinch now because I like the color better. It's clear instead of this bright red kind of blood color, and it worked. They both work the same way. Basically, I made a new gasket out of some gasket material that sealed better than the one that came with the kit, and then covered every surface, every mounting surface with this Permatex stuff, and mounted it all back together. Again, it doesn't look great. There's red like goo on some stuff that I'm not crazy about, but it does seal all the way up now around my adapter and everything, and it works really well. If you wanted to do this proper, if you really wanted to get the absolute most out of this 3236, because it does flow a lot more than the factory carb, you would want to mill off the mount for the carburetor. It's down to like a little, I don't know what the size of the hole is, maybe like a 32 or something millimeter hole, maybe smaller. And so basically the adapter's a funnel, and it funnels everything down, so there's a restriction there. I think that you would pick up a ton of performance just by milling off that mount, and then like JB welding or weld welding a adapter plate for the Weber carburetor. That way you just get the whole opening of the Weber. The Weber's got this big oval opening, 2 butterflies, so there's a lot of room for air to come in, a lot of room for fuel to come in, and I think it would just run way better. And if I was keeping this car, I would probably try that just to see what it did, just see how much power we could pick up and how much drivability we could pick up. But I'm not, so we're going to use the adapter just in case the new owner wants to go back to an Autolite. They really should go with an engine swap, but if they want to go back to the Autolite, they can. So with the carb sealed up, I knew that there was no vacuum leaks. I tested and could not get it to leak, but it still wouldn't run. It wouldn't stay running. And that was because my alternator was bad. I know you're surprised, and I was too. The alternator didn't work, and neither did the voltage regulator, which on old cars, you had an alternator and then a regulator that kept the alternator from just driving the voltage up to the battery. So both of those were bad, so I got a new alternator and I got a new voltage regulator, and with that we finally had a working charging system and a running car. Now they won't be able to hear you because of the lawnmower.
He just needed a woman!
That looks cool. Maybe if I hold hold it still while you kick it.
Is that lined up right?
Yeah, I think so.
Alright, ready?
Maybe. I'm not gonna make that work actually. Hang on. Oh, here you go.
You record that?
Yeah.
You working? You fixing it?
hard. Now the story doesn't end here technically. We're gonna have to skip forward a few months to when the car's finished, and that's just because the car stopped running again. I got it running and I drove it, and then it stopped. I swapped the carbs back out. That didn't work. Put the Weber back on. I changed everything that I thought could be the problem, and it wasn't. Ended up taking it to a good friend of mine, Gary Haynes, who's very familiar with old Fords and just old cars in general. And basically what happened is, at one point in time, I was testing out the speakers, and I had the key in the on position, and with an old car with points ignition, if you leave the key on and the points were touching, you'll burn out your points and you'll burn out your condenser, and it'll keep the car from being able to run. How? I didn't know that. Well, how would I know that? I didn't. So Gary told me that. He replaced the condenser, the points, and the plugs, and the car ran again. So that was a little frustrating because it did take months to figure that out. A month of me kind of troubleshooting when I had free time, and then I literally left it at his shop for like 2 months so he got some time to work on it. But after getting that sorted, the car did run again, and I was reminded of how far cars have come in reliability since the 60s. Now, the car's on the road, it looks awesome, and it's time to sell it. Before we can do that, we got to get some beauty shots.
No. Pretty Caroline, oh, 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 stone cold stunner. She was a winner, started working at the dine. Oh, 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 serves as a reminder to count your blessings, 'cause it's telling fair. They'll put you down and leave you dead, don't make them scared. Yeah, it's the ugly truth, how they come in for you. Yeah, yeah, no. Don't you think you're better off where the neighbors don't stare? Maybe you're wanted, looking good for the movie screens, living in make-believe, hoping your wishes get granted. I know you never giving up unless it's real. A slippery slope, it's not enough to please you. Pretty Caroline, oh, 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 stone cold stunner. She was a winner.
So the car drives pretty good. I did put new shocks in this car as well during all of this process, and it really is, it's quiet over bumps, which is amazing for a car this old, and it handles pretty well for an old American car. It feels good. It's really fun to drive. In fact, if I did not have a classic car already in my old 911, then I would probably keep this car just because it's a fun car to have. It gets a lot of looks. People ask questions about it, and it's just a fun car to drive. It's very much like sitting in a time capsule. I've only been playing oldies when I drive it, just to feel like I'm back in time when I drive this car, and it really does make you feel like you've gone back in time. But we cannot keep this car. It has to get sold. That's the point of Derelectibles, is to make some money. Now, we're not starting off with a blazing start, because you'll see our total is somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,500 in this car, thanks to some very bad decisions that I made, including buying this car. It's a little more than that because I've had to do some exhaust work, and I've added that in right here. We had to seal up the exhaust because it fell apart as I drove the car. So I got that fixed. And this is our total number. So we have to take that into account. Now, where did I make mistakes? You've seen them in the video, but basically the Weber car was a huge mistake. I should have just got a new auto light, put it on, and been done. It cost me a lot of money. The car was a huge mistake, buying it. I could have bought this car and made money, but I needed to buy it for about $900. And I would have had a better idea of what I was getting into, and I probably would have curbed my expectations a little bit and not taken the car so far. I took the car this far thinking that it was all going to pan out and play out well and make money. The problem is I've been watching the market through this entire process, and none of them that I have seen have been selling for more than like 15, 16 grand. Now, that's a car that's in better shape than mine. Sometimes V8, sometimes 6-cylinder, but just more original, less touched, less messed with, things like that. If they're modified a little bit, or they're missing some parts maybe, or some stuff doesn't work, they're going anywhere from like 10.5 to 13. Now, that's not great for me. As you can see, I've got 10.5 in this car. That is just parts. That doesn't include the labor. How many hours of labor? Well, I didn't track it this go around. I will for the next episode of Derelectibles. I'm working on that episode now, and it's not looking good though. I would say between the paint job, getting the engine running, replacing an entire interior, installing windshield, rear window, fixing brakes, fixing the fuel system, fixing suspension parts, repainting the underside or the engine bay, underneath the carpet, in the trunk, rewiring, everything else. I've got well over 200 hours in this car, but probably more than that. I just don't want to hurt my own feelings. And we didn't make very much money at all. So that's a little bit frustrating, but I have learned a lot of lessons with this car, and I have already addressed all of those with the next episode. The next episode we actually will make money, and that's thank goodness that's gonna happen. So we are at 10.5, and the sale price of the first Derelectable 1965 Ford Mustang 6-cylinder is $12,000. $12,000, which is a good price for a 6-cylinder Mustang. It's a pretty car. It needs a little bit of TLC still, like the windshield wiper switch is intermittent failure, and some of the fuel and temperature gauges, or the CVR keeps going out, which if you're a Ford guy, you know what that is. If you're not, don't worry about it. It just keeps going out, which is kind of frustrating. You know, there's little kind of 50-year-old car problems, but overall you could get it, you could drive it home, you could drive it every day and not really have too many issues unless it rains. So that's good. You know, $12,000 is fine. Except I've got 10.5 in it. And then I've got all the work in it. So not a great investment. Starting off with a mistake. But I learned a lot, which is what matters, right? Right. But I was, you know, on the bright side, I was reflecting on this build with somebody yesterday and just thinking about built as a channel. And when I started, I'd never worked on an engine before. I'd never painted a car before. I'd never done interior before. I'd never welded before. I had never diagnosed a non-running problem before. I'd pretty much just changed the oil and I painted some wheels, and I painted a few cars with some help. None of them turned out very good. So, you know, I did not know how to work on cars, really. And after seeing this video, I think I might know how. I don't know how to make money with cars yet, but I do know how to work on them. So that's kind of cool. It's cool to see the progress over the course of build, because it's all been, you guys have watched me literally. If you're wondering, go to my first few videos on the Neon and you will see how far we have come. It is quite a ways. So we are able to fix a car now. I just got to figure out how to make money doing it. That's it. No big deal. Hey, that's going to be it for this video. We are going to be posting regular content again. I'm so glad that you guys are still here. Thank you for all of the comments. I am responding to all of those still. But the comments from the last video that kind of explained where I went for 6 months, I have not stopped filming or working in that time. I just stopped posting just to kind of get my bearings. Like I said, we're in a new place. As you'll notice, you've never seen this place before. Very few people have. And I'm going to tell you about it. I want to tell you about it, but that will have to wait till the next video. We'll see you guys in the next one. I'm going to go to my quiet place now and meditate on the mistakes that I've made in this past build. See ya. I'm making a video.
Why do you have that chair there?
Because I'm going to be talking in the video, and I'm going to be sitting in the chair while I'm talking. But you, hang on, walk out of frame. All right, stay out, and you can come sit in my lap, okay?
I'll just come in random time. Okay,
that's great. Can I go ahead and start talking?
Yeah.
Can you see me in there?
There we go.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Maybe scoot it a little bit closer so that the audio is better. How's that? Can you still see Daddy?
Wait, I'm gonna scoot it.
No. I need to be closer. It's fine where you had it. We might need to go up a little bit. We need to go up.
Wait. Oh, you mean like?
We can make this go up some.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was about to do.
No, not that part. This part.
Oh.
Show it to the screen up close.
I'm missing your video.
Did you draw that? No, mommy did.